Okay. Good morning. Good afternoon. Start of a new week. Start of a new month. Going to continue sparring. I'm calling it sparring, poker sparring, at slightly higher stakes than in the past. NL25 Zoom. Looking to make another leap. Probably if things are going well by the end of the month. Ran really well today. Up 2 buy-ins. Um, say 2/3 of the session was pretty card dead. VPIPing like say just under 20, and then made a couple great hands and got paid off. So the strategy of maintaining and slowly building a reservoir that either banks a good win when we get stacks in and actually take it, or when we get stacks in and lose, we're not uh, so massively down because we've built up a little bit of a reservoir. So, and the reservoir comes from finding those thin value positions, finding smart, um, low risk bluffs on favorable boards, uh, trying not to make too many kind of easy mistakes, and just playing kind of a solid ABC poker, base game poker, and always on the lookout for exploitable positions versus players who are showing some sort of recognizable imbalance. The intentions today were to verbalize as many decisions as I could, which I did quite well in the beginning of the session, but then reverted into kind of a more flow state play, I guess. This isn't what I wanted. I want to be conscious as I'm sparring. I want to think about the punches that I'm throwing, and I want to think about my defenses. And but at the same time, obviously there is some sort of intuitive reaction that we're trying to draw on, but it's kind of like a conscious intuition, I think, is what I'm trying to play from. So while I neglected in the second half of the session to verbalize my actions and my reasoning as to why the action that I was taking was best, I think I was still fairly present in making those decisions, and at the very least, very quickly after making a decision, was able to evaluate whether that decision had been the wisest, not based on results, but just based on um, general state of world and where we were in range. So continuing to also bring the intention of, and this is what I was trying to verbalize, is like, what's the world favorability? What tier is our hand in? What is the action we're taking? Is it a value bet or a bluff? And for what value are we looking, i.e., what tier are we in? Which portion of our value range are we in? And when bluffing, what kind of tier hand is that bluff? And whether that tier is something that can be made on the current world state. So very favorable boards mean that we can bluff all the way down to tier 7. Very unfavorable boards mean that we're likely only bluffing from tier 5, and sometimes tier 6. Neutral worlds allow us to sometimes bluff with tier 7. Again, also trying to consider range, contention, polarization, all of those things. So we're trying to find like a theoretical base to play from that is doable in game, that is not too many concepts, but enough that like enough of the theoretical game state can be mapped, I guess is sort of the best way to describe it. I won't be able to do my full thing today, probably do about 45 minutes review, and then we'll call it a day and we'll hit it again tomorrow. So we open 7-8 in the small blind and get called from the big blind. We have a gut shot on a paired board. No, we have an open ender on a paired board. So pretty good, favorable for us. Would love to have seen a heart on the board as well, so we could actually backdoor flushes too. But nonetheless, pretty good board for this particular combo, but maybe not the best for our opening range. So we'll check and look to raise. I think, with this combo, which is what we did, and we got a fold. Fairly standard, I think. No need to check. I think the game tape. Oh, why not? This is why not have it? I know I'm seeing lots of debate online in my people about how we want to not be using the solver to check lines, but I don't necessarily agree. I think we find mistakes in the line checks that are then useful to dig deeper into what caused us to think that we could do a certain action. And for sure, not just like check marking ourselves for having done good, i.e. here, we do have raises for sure. We also have calls, so we're indifferent to raises and calls. And then also clicking through to see the strategy overall and to see what kind of thresholds these actions want to be worked on. So for example, with this, we are indifferent with a 9-8 raise and call. Oh no, sorry, not a 9-8. It was a 8-7. 8-7 raise and call. That particular combo, since we don't have any backdoor draws, does tend to call. Its bigger raises are not there. It's the ones that have those backdoor flush draws that actually get to do more raising, but it's still good. The general state is, let's see what our raises are, 50%, so we picked the right, and it is a cross range. So we're raising pretty well across the full range, so we can't really go wrong on this board with playing both checks and raises, or calls and raises. So we'll give this a good hand. 8-4 will certainly be a defend, could be a raise. Again, trying to get more raises into our big blind strategy. So I think I would prefer to see a raise there. I think maybe in game I thought this guy's 3-bet's quite low, so it's probably quite strong. Or sorry, that's bad stat. So he's opening a fairly reasonable range, but the 3-betting is low, so we're not actually facing 3-bet. We're the 3-better. Anyway, prefer a raise. Let's try and, like, once again for the 100th time, try and get those raises in there. The top two, or a top and bottom two, we'll check it to the pre-flop aggressor, and then when the flush comes in, we kind of have I think like a tier 2 or 3 hand. It's the equivalent of a strong ace, I think, which we generally don't have in this range, so we could substitute a 4 for a strong ace range, and with a flush on board, I think we're kind of betting as if we have drawn a flush. So in a way, we're turning a fairly solid value hand into a bluff, which I don't think is necessarily the right thing to do. Having said that, probably none of the sets are folding like an 8s or 4s. Aces, I would imagine they would, well, maybe they would check those. So aces, I don't think are going to fold at all. So we block, they check. Then the two pair gets duplicated. Now we're chopping with an ace. And again, I think we just protect a checking range, call down a bet, and see the showdown. So having said that, this is definitely a hand worth seeing whether the solver does want to have more bets there. And that is ace 4. Yes, ace 4. Ace 4, ace 4. Ace 4. This line is pretty well fine. The bets are on the river, and we could make them, but the indifference factor is just almost negligible. So also a fine play. I'm not going to bother looking into the strategy on things that seem to be going fine. 4-6 will open. We get called. Hit a pair of 4s on a very favorable board for us. We put a small bet in. When the 3 comes on the turn, we now have a gut shot, so we have a lot of showdown value with a pair of 4s and it certainly could hit a nuts on the river. We could continue to bet, but we would not love to be raised. So I decided to check and call a semi-polar bet. When the river card comes to 7, we now kind of have a middling small pair. My guess is that the solver probably calls with this. We could certainly raise representing a 5-6, but it's just such a slight combo. And I don't know whether this necessitates a call. I'm almost guessing most of the time the solver, because our range is so wide, we really don't fold out small pairs or any pairs really, because we just are overfolding if we do that. We need to pretty well call anything. The only thing I think, well, I have no stats on this person, so I kind of feel like a polar turn and semi-polar river indicates some strength, no concern. They're in position. They don't have to reopen the action. They have most likely a good king, and maybe some smaller pairs that they didn't raise pre. I don't think they do this with 2s. I don't think they do this with a 3. I don't know what bluffs they would make here that they call the flop with. Maybe 5-6 calls, maybe 5-3. But they have a showdown value of 3 versus ace high. We do have some incentive to call with our ace highs. And so I elected to fold here, and I'm betting almost certainly that the solver would say that's a bad fold. 4-8, 4-6. And no, actually, it's okay with that fold. It's that size, I guess. There is no raise either. Splitting. Actually, it's like a slight difference of call and fold. 6 EV, 0.06 EV. So I don't see any other points in this hand with this card that kind of give us a lot of indication as to whether it's to be played any differently, really. Right on the edge of our folding range. 5-4 is the straight. 6-4 is just a slight call. So in an analyzer, it's a little bit more of a call. 5-3 is also a call. 7-4. Oh, that's the straight. 5-4 is not the straight. 7-4 is the straight. All right. 7-5. Yeah, right. 7-4 is a 2 pair. 6-5 is the straight. Right. So of course we're raising a straight. I suppose when we're using ace highs, we call with some of those because they block king value, whereas these smaller pairs don't block that king value, so they make it more likely that we should fold. Third pair is 5s, low pair are 3s, so this is the fourth pair. And the fourth pair is actually folding. Third pair, we have a lot of 4s to fold. We can call with ace 4 and then fold 6-4. Yeah, and then these under pairs are also folds, it looks like, interestingly. So we call because we block sets as well, probably with a 4, but we just don't call that many 4s. We call our best 4s king and the ace 4. And we can let these lower 4s go. 5, 4. 5, 4 calls more likely because it blocks a straight as well. So the blocking factor here is just so big, right? Blocking like severe value. And that's what we're getting these calls from those ace highs for. Ace 5 is a straight as well. So I think it's okay. It seems fine. And I understand a little bit better where this hand gets its incentives. Very slight calls, mostly because we block a set, but knowing that we have better 4s, stronger 4s that will be more likely to call. Probably because they have, I would bet if we look in their range here of what's betting that half pot is probably a bunch of shitty 4s. So yeah, they bet with a 6-4, they bet with a 5-4, they bet with an 8-4. They don't use a 7, that's 2 pair. Check a 2 pair. Oh, wrong node. River. Wink. This one. Yeah, not a lot. So 5-4 they bet with, but and king 4. 2 pair. Right, the king 4 is a 2 pair, which is why we were calling it in the other hand, obviously, or in the other node. I guess the only reason to call with, or to call with a 4, we're certainly not raising a 4, is just because of that blocker, the set. But we have those other, we have the ace 4s to do that work maybe. Queen Jack open, get called 3-way. Generally not betting anything in the middle here. Certainly not betting this board, which has a lot of polar for these other ranges. Reads on nobody. Ace comes, and I think I can represent better aces. Lots of aces. They can certainly have some to call with, which neither of them do. But the ace is strong enough card for us on the turn here to put in a bet, I think, and a small bet at that. But we get a fold, so that's okay. Good hand. King Jack will ISO a bunch of limpers, get 1 call. Queen 7-4. Decide it's not good enough for me to bet out, so I check. They check. 5 then is not also a card that's good for me. It's going to be a lot stronger for these limpy ranges. When they bet into us, we can just let it go. Jacks will open and get a call. 3-way, an ace on the board, blows for jacks. When they bet, we'll peel 1. So they could certainly be using position to put a bet in. When they check again, and then the king comes on the river, the king is definitely a beneficial card for us, assuming they don't have an ace. Probably not betting, not turning, not missing a bet on the turn with a good ace or any ace, I would imagine. Particularly a 25-0, so not a particularly good player. So we will call off any bet here, but end up getting a win with Queen 9 against Queen 9. So that's good. That's good. 5s will open, defend from the big blind. Really wet board, as wet a board as you can get. This board is going to hit both of us. Will be nutted, is what this board is, whereas for them, they're going to condense around it. I could bet this flop for sure, but I'd have to polarize, and I decide to see a turn, I think. I'm not quite sure that kings are our polarizing hand. We certainly have lots of flush draws to polar with. We have lots of I mean, betting a 5 here, I think a betting set a pair of 5s is a bluff. It's absolutely a bluff. We're likely betting into a range that has all kinds of pieces of this and will likely call, especially to a pot size bet on a small pot. So I think letting it play is not a bad move. A delayed C bet here for polar size is probably a good shot. We do get called when the 3 and flush completes on the river. I think at this point there's no real value to continuing to bluff with this hand. I think it's a one and done factor. So, but I don't know whether that's such a smart play. So this is one I definitely going to need to see, and also see what are the bluffs and whether 5s is in that bluffing. So solver does get bets out, and it does polar for the most part. It's got some small bets, got some medium and large. I would tend to go more polar. This card does allow us to bet. We pick the right size based on EV, and then our check on the river is fine. So the only mistake we made here is not betting the flop. And this is absolutely flop. This is absolutely a bet. More polar than not. As 5s are weak. Yes, shit. And we need to start building a pot for our value. Turner River is fine. So I'm going to say it's okay. Okay. Actually, we'll probably call that inaccuracy. And then let's just look and see what we continue to do should we have put that larger bet in on the flop. So we bet 76. They call. Turn is a jack offsuit jack. They check. And now with 5s, we continue to bet, I'd imagine. Some portion, yeah. So the 5s that don't block the flush draws are going to keep going, so no club 5. If we polar again and they call that, and then a 3 does come on the river and they check, we should probably just check back, I would imagine. Oh no, we don't. We do, yes. Well, we actually have overbets. We split between overbets and checks. So because we also have lots of flushes that we're betting this way, and we have that, we got to draw this as one of our worst hands. And that's this trash right here. Can't see, I'm actually the solver or the recorder is out of zone here, but the trash hands will just make them focus. Trash hands, bink. What's going on here? Trash hands, bink. Oh. Problem is, yeah, there we go, trash. So it's all this stuff down to the bottom here. 5s, 5, 4, 6, 5. Mostly because we don't have anything else to bluff with. It's bottom end of a straight draw. And then just these shitty cards because we want to get aces to fold, I guess. Some sort of ace high hand. Maybe some queen, possibly a 10. Although the 10s here block that, so it must be jack. So if we did bet for 150, 150, what are they folding? Well, it's rarely used. Basically, a set of 10s is the only thing that calls. Everything else folds. So ace high, king high, and a bunch of other things that are worse than or better than us, just by basically No, actually, we're beating all of this stuff. So it doesn't actually make a lot of sense because there's nothing better that folds. I think the fact that the line is oh wait, this is the problem. Here we go. And that's why. Okay, so we got filtering on. So we can get folds from, yes. So a bunch of 10. No, they're calling. 10s are calling. Obviously the big ones are calling. Jacks are calling. A bunch of 10s are calling. What is it that fives? This is probably part of the problem. No, fives bet. So if we go 150, they call. They're even calling. Oh no, that's a 10. Calling with the jacks, calling the straights. No, they're calling a top pair. Yeah, third pairs, top pair. Ah, the queens are folding. So we're getting folds from queens. That's where it is. And maybe some trip jacks as well. The ones that actually doesn't seem like the heart ones. Heart ones fold. And then a couple of these jacks as well. Heart fold. Heart calls. I don't know. Who knows? It's all super complicated and too much for my head to get around. But the point is, we are getting folds in this area. So queens, top pair, and that from those fives, and from other portions of that part of the region there. All of this shit down here that just has nothing and unblocks queens, some jacks. Okay, it's good to know. Anyway, turn in river. River's okay, but this combo and low card hands do have a lot of big bets to pressure Queen X and a few Jack X. I would think, one would think the club matters. You'd think that we would probably want to have a club in here to use that as a bluff. Nothing else. Kings open, we raise, get called, big pot. So we are close to SPR1. So we're very cautious now with any betting. I decide to check on a not super favorable board for us. I mean, granted, we're nutted, stronger nuts than they are, but and we do have the kings and ace over pairs, but they probably have a lot more top pairs. We have the best one, ace queen, but they have king queen and they have queen jack. They have better two pairs probably. I don't think we're raised through that four betting queen jack often. 5 turn changes very little, brings in a flush draw. If we had the flush draw, say we had ace king suited spades, then we could put a bet out, I think. Probably a small bet. Who's the polar range right now? We're still the polar range, so bigger bet. They're not condensed. The checking action does not necessarily condense them. We both check. Jack on the river. I decide I have king jack, ace jack. They have queen jack though, so there's still no world where we can put a bet in. When they put a terrible sized bet on the river as big blind, it's inducing for sure. maybe Queen Jack would want a small bet to try and get some amount of value and to try and induce, but it also feels weak. And I decide that in a check, check, check. And I also think Queen Jack on the turn, flush card in position probably does not hold back. I don't see them double checking the top pair twice like that. It doesn't make a lot of sense. So I really discount out that. I discount out all the houses basically. So once I'm out on that, then what they have that they could have is ace jack, king jack, those sorts of hands. So I'm bluff catching those. My bluff catchers are going to be pairs, 10s through 6s, maybe even 4s. And then I think I decide that I have enough. I have a need for enough bluff catchers that there are some random bluffs. This guy has got no stats worth drawing on. Enough random bluffs that I can call, which I did, and they had ace 10. So good call, but not totally sure I've justified myself well enough here to convince myself that it was a good play. So let's just see. Yeah. That's not the one, it's this one. So sure, pre-flop is good. We do have a small bet most of the time on the flop, so we could have led there. We check the turn, but we actually have better action of a half pot bet because they checked back. So probably better spot to bet rather than check. River Jack comes in a for sure 100% check, but the fold frequency is 0 basically. We're calling almost all the time. The EV is so different. I'm not sure why there would be a frequency split there, but this is a call every day, all day. So good read there. The only issue was not betting the turn. So let's make a note of that. We will say this is okay. And we'll say that the turn, most of the time, we want to bet here with a gut shot in a 4-bet pot with all the nut hands and picking up flush draws. I want to just look at that range quickly. Turn, this is us here. So range action of 25 to 50%. So our range is so much stronger at this point. We're under the gun. It is stronger in this area, but it's weaker here, and it's actually weaker in the value. We're not quite as nutted as I imagined. They have some aces. It's because it's 4-bet ranges, right? So we are under the gun, aren't we? Are we this? Yeah, there's the button. So yeah. So I guess because we're so strong in the middle here, that allows us to have a bunch of medium-sized bets, but it's not totally clear to me why. Because they are so much stronger in there. It seems like if we're strong in the middle, we probably want to mostly check call, I would think, with this range. We have all of that middle, and they're the polar, but we have a bunch of trash, more trash than they have, interestingly enough. But they're the more polar range. So for sure the bet size makes sense. It's just that frequency of these small to medium-sized bets is sort of surprising to me. I'm not totally sure why that's the case. On turn, Solver has us betting 60% of time with B25 and B50. Size makes sense as their range is more polar on this card. Hard to see that holding. Hard to see that in 4-bet spot ranges. Very tight, strong ranges. But the case, it's true though that while we have kings, queens, they also have queens. They have jacks. We have jacks. They have threes. Nope. They have fives. Nope. And they have ace 5, ace 4, ace 10 a lot of the time. It's interesting. They have ace queen, king queen, and queens. But we have those as well, except we have all of these other, which I don't think I have. So actually, I think my range is probably stronger than what the solver has. Like if I was to solve out these middle ace X combos, I wouldn't have them as much. So that would actually, like the combo count is so low too. So it actually turns into kind of a shitty solve because there's just so little here. I guess partially because we would be continuing here more often than, yeah. So part of the issue is these ranges just get so thin in terms of volume because this action, I didn't take this action on the flop. So part of issue is the lack of betting on flop. We have a range bet for B33 for sure, across all range on this board. So, so the mistake really is there. Rest of solve isn't particularly useful because so little of our range checks. Okay, I actually call this an inconsistency, inaccuracy, and we'll let it go at that. But we should be range betting with 2 Broadway cards on board. We probably overthought ourselves in terms of world favorability, quote unquote. Open the ace, get a call. Pretty not bad for this combo, not great for our range, but when bet 2, we'll call 1. Jack comes, and then the turn of a 10, I think I decided I can put a bet in. Not totally sure what justification I have for this. I guess because they small bet and then check turn, which sort of screams like pair of 4s, pair of 7s, pair of 6s, maybe 8s, unlikely 9s, a pair of 3s maybe. And we really don't have anything, right? But we are. I think this is a good world favorability question. When the jack comes, all their jack pairs have gone away. So Jack 10 is not here. They would continue to bet on the turn. We certainly have Jack 10, and we could certainly be calling with like a Jack 10 club, spade, or sevens. 8, 9, yeah, like it's both of those are backdoors, but they are, and they're thin calls, but we could certainly be there calling. We could have ace jack, which we would call with overs and backdoors. We would have, there's a lot of, I think, hands that are better in our range now that they check the turn. So, in terms of favorability, I feel like the world has become more favorable for us. And that means we can bluff kind of more thinly with just randomness. And we could get tons of folds from better, including better ace X's. But, you know, we could also be winning already versus king queens and king nines and stuff like that. So we could certainly have check down as well, maybe. But I'm saying that the call, the bet was worth making. Let's put it that way. So we open, fine. We check, fine. We call, fine. We check, fine. And then we can certainly check, and actually it is minus EV to bet, although it does have a certain frequency of bets. The smaller bet is better, but the river in the solve wants to mostly check as well, just because of probably some showdown value. And let's see where the bets are coming from and whether we actually have, yeah, we do have a polar range at this point. Somewhat, all of that, much stronger. So, and our favorability for us is lower. We're not, or we don't have a like a range advantage, but we have a nut advantage. This stuff. And quite a bit actually too, with all of those nut hands there. So the point ultimately is, this is the river, and we are the cutoff. So our strategy does include bets from these ace X cards. We have the clubs, right? Yeah. And the clubs are the only ace X cards that don't really have a bet here. Oh, that's not true. It's, again, the analyzer versus the library is slightly different, but you can see that we actually do have like a B50. It's indifferent. What's our... We are betting about 20% of the time, 25% of the time, 45% with trash, and almost double the amount of trash hands to best hands. So yeah, so the read is right. This is a favorable board, I think, if I'm reading that correctly and working the theory out. And this is a fine bet on the river. So good. Run out favorable to us, nut-wise, not advantage-wise. And we have more fold equity than neutral, than odd odds norm. So ace 8 club is in diff between bets and checks. Sizes is slightly off, but I think that's okay. We'd simplify there to just a polar strategy, not, I don't think any, since we nut advantage, there's no point in having some smaller bet sizes. It just gets confusing. Defend a queen 6, we hit a queen, so middle pair will call. Then when a king and flush comes and they continue to bet, I think we just fold, so that's fine. I'll do one more hand here before I go. 10-9 will defend, certainly raise. Maybe in the future I should include some of those as my raises. Now we hit a gut shot. Since there's no bets and we are out of position, I think that spot right there probably needs a bet, but I guess I decided the ace just is too good for them. There's too many aces in their range, so especially a 15 VPIP, there's no point in if there's any other card came, any other card other than even actually even especially a spade, any other card, especially a spade, even a king, definitely a jack, where the jack makes us a straight. Any smaller cards, we certainly put a bet in there and rep that we have more than we hold. So I think that this is good, and I'm not going to bother with this one because this was a misclick here. Let's click open. We end up winning it because we have a pair of twos and call a tiny little bet on the river, and they had ace jack. Let me find one of the big hands. Threes, no. Ace nine, was that it? No, that's a good hand. No, that was one. So they do a kind of a half pot bet, and I don't see there's any value in kind of a raggedy board like this in raising. Might as well keep all their bluffs in to the turn. And when the king comes, we definitely can raise, but they fold, unfortunately. We got a really good hand there. And then we flopped a, not here, but not here either. Here, we flopped a flush. It's good. We'll continue with a small bet. They call it. We continue to polar. Since the straight came in, we could certainly have checked back to induce, but I think we have nut hands, and they have certainly have a straight and two pairs and all kinds of good stuff to call with, and they just end up shoving with I don't know what. We ran it twice, and they had jacks, set of jacks, unfortunately for them. So yeah, I think ultimately good session. Continuing to play without making major blunders. It's good. Another session with no blunders. Had one inaccuracy in there, I think, which is also good. And some good hands. Generally, I think playing with good awareness. When days go well, such as this spot here, we make ourselves some money. And they didn't end up getting too bad on us. So good.